first off, would you not only tell us, who you are and who you're with, but tell us what is a SIMBA, and then tell us, a thing.
What is a SIMBA?
And then tell us things that you've run into, and then we'll just get going.
Ooh. My name is Robin. I'm the executive director at SIMBA. I used to work at Fellow in a prior life, so I knew Josh, I knew Celeb Visuals. I remember when your baby was here in the helmet.
Oh.
Back in the day, before this whole backside was built out and the lockers were over here, I actually, Maker and Made is across the hall. I set up their business a lifetime ago.
Oh my gosh, you're mentioning all the old names.
Right?
I love it.
Like it was, and Maker and Made, Britt is a little close to my age. Those of you who know them, they're a great marketing firm across the hall. Millie's much younger. And I always sat at a table with, I would say, the older folks in the space. And I was like, I just want to be around the cool kids, though. But Millie was like 22 at the time, and I was, 35. I'm like, nope, can't do it. But I spent a lot of time at Fellow, spent a lot of time at Coil, spent a lot of time in this building. I miss this building. I miss this space. But SIMBA is... a couple of years ago, we were tabling at the Lentil Festival in Pullman, which sounds like a weird space for a nonprofit, but it's a huge community event. Like 25, 30,000 people show up to the Lentil Festival.
Love it.
I'm there in a purple tent because that's one of SIMBA's colors by myself during fire season. But this man kept coming around. I think he was maybe imbibing. There's a beer garden. Kept telling me, did you know that SIMBA is African for lion? I was like, I did know that. Thank you so much. Do you have a business you want to talk about or anything? No. So it is African for lion. And if you read my newsletter, sometimes I make a cat pun. I kind of got told to stop those for a little bit.
Who doesn't love a cat pun?
I love a cat pun. But we're the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. So also that's a mouthful. And I try to not say it, but we don't just work in Spokane. We work in about 13 Eastern Washington counties. I was telling Josh, I was in Colfax 2 days ago teaching nonprofits about buying real estate and how they're just not ready, to the 35 Main Street Alliance organizations in the state through Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. But we're a C3, so our focus is on education, outreach, advocacy. We offer one-on-one consultations. Those are free or no more than $25, depending on topic. The reason some of them are free is because we have some great government contracts like L&I, and I will talk about L&I throughout this. If you want to talk about a regulatory agency that is actually kind to you if you talk to them first, it's L&I.
Yeah, because they won't report on you, right? Like you can take them your issues and then they won't tattle, which is really great.
There's a small business office through L&I. We're a partner with them, and you can take any issue no matter how egregious it is, and they have a non-reporting duty. And their team is incredible. Alexis is actually reporting a podcast next week with one of the team members who loves a pun and a dad joke, and I'm so sad I cannot be there for that because I also love a pun and a dad joke.
Love it.
We do workshops. We always do one on Zoom called Business Brew, different topics. We are skipping it this month because there's a sign by the door. We are hosting our first ever kind of inaugural gala-style fundraiser, the SIMBA Circus. You're all invited. If you want a discount code, use Circus at checkout. It might get you a good deal for those who are here. But it'll be a night of aerial performances, possibly a lion, food, drink, engagement. So I didn't want to do a sad chicken paddle raise, because we've all done those, right? In Western Washington, when we go to nonprofit fundraisers, it's a sad salmon paddle raise. One of my friends calls it Northwest Meatloaf, which is not untrue. But we have a video library talking about videos. Some of them are professionally recorded, some are Zoom recorded, you can tell. It's really hard to watch yourself talk and see how you're reacting, see how the audience is reacting. There's a video I was watching to edit to make sure the content was correct, where I'm talking and I'm like, oh, I sound just like my mom. And there's someone in the audience actively yawning. I'm like, great, it's going amazing. On topics that matter to business owners, we have 30 so of those. We have memberships. Some of our members are in this room that offer some additional benefits, networking and other kinds of things. But we really try to think of ourselves as we're in the business of helping you run your business, even if that means how do I stamp a legal size envelope, which is a real issue. We work with entrepreneurs, small businesses, and I would only tease Emily if she could take it. And she also, her mom's an educator, so she's like, I can't tell my mom this happened. Right? Small businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits. So we consult through all of those, and our focus is kind of a local first economy. And that looks different in different places. And so that's kind of what we do. I think one of the issues I often forget, and I have to set a reminder for, when you hire a new employee in the state of Washington, you have a very narrow window to report that hire to the Department of Health and Social Services. And you're like, why would I do that if I'm running a grant writing company, or I'm running a nonprofit or a marketing firm? Because Department of Health and Social Services is checking if they have a child support lien.
That's right.
They're also checking if they're owed child support. So we're helping people either pay or get their child support. They're also making sure that person is not actively still collecting unemployment when they're employed. And
Correct.
You as an employer, if you don't submit that, you can get fined. And you can ultimately lose your ability to have employees. And it's free, it's tedious, but you have to do it, and it's an online portal. So that is one I didn't put on the list, but that is something that...
Oh, it's making the list now.
I definitely forgot at one point, and am surprised by that. But we hear crazy things. We've dealt with crazy things. I've done regulatory work for 20 plus years, longer than Emily's been alive. And I think one of the things that one of my favorite stories, speaking of L&I, is I was doing some work in a rural community, and I was at a restaurant, and I wasn't helping them with employment. But I was there talking to them about a tax filing issue, because they were on the old version of QuickBooks that didn't automatically file their payroll taxes to the IRS. And the IRS does not play about your payroll taxes. And in a nonprofit, this is wild. In a nonprofit, if the payroll taxes are not paid over a certain amount of time, they can garnish the personal bank accounts of your board members and your executive staff. So
and
nothing,
a hush fell over the room.
Exactly. Nothing gets paid before the payroll taxes. But if you're using something like a QuickBooks, Augusta with fill in the blank, they're doing it automatically. But if you're using the old version of QuickBooks, is what they were doing, those payments were being tracked and being saved, but they weren't being sent to the IRS. And their bookkeeper was just a family friend. So that's what I was there for. But as we're talking, they're like, yeah, we bought this business, years ago from someone who owned it. It's been in the community for a long time, restaurant. And our kids work here. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I didn't know how old this person was, and I'm not making assumptions. I'm really bad with guessing ages. She said, yeah. I'm like, oh, what do your kids do here? And like, oh, they do dishes and pour coffee. And I was like, great, how old are your children? 11 and 12. And perhaps you may not know, but in Washington, you have to be at least 15 outside of agricultural space to work in a restaurant. And things you cannot do at 11, even at 15, are pour hot coffee or use a commercial dishwasher. So I was able to gently say, whew, let me go to my car. I've got these handouts about minors working in spaces and working with family, and I was able to hand them to them and say, here's the number at the small business office to call. And they're gonna say, maybe how we give children, because she said, oh, I want them to have responsibility. I'm like, what if we gave them chores at home?
Yep. What if they poured coffee at home?
Right, what if we did dishes at home?
Yeah.
Sweeping mom.
Right,
Yeah.
because there is no, and I tell people this all the time, there's no L&I police, sort of. But what if that poor child spills coffee on someone?
I always say there's not a problem until somebody gets hurt, but now it's also disgruntled employees, but we'll talk about that.
But both of those things.
Yeah.
And so if one of those things happens and there's a report, L&I is going to be really unhappy that your 11-year-old poured hot coffee on a customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wild.
Yeah.
All right. So
I don't think the kids work there anymore, but again, I'm not the L&I police. Yeah.
You said outside of agriculture. What's the agriculture?
So agriculture, you can be 14 if you're a family member. And there's pretty strict rules about it, but they're not as strict as maybe I would like them to be. I know when I was 14, I shouldn't have been anywhere near any kind of equipment, but.
So, and let's talk through this, because my
Yeah.
oldest worked through high school, and he was working through the pandemic. He had to get a form signed by the high school that confirmed that he was working.
Yep.
There's a limit on how many hours they work, and if they work over those, they also have to have the school sign off on that. Is that correct? Am I remembering
That's correct.
that right?
And there's a
Okay.
parental form. And
Yep.
one thing, because there's a lot of homeschoolers in especially Eastern Washington, if you are a homeschooled student, you can't just work all the time. They treat you as if you're on the schedule of whatever public school is nearest to where you live. So you also have to get that schedule and follow that schedule. So if it was a day off from school, like in service or whatever, you could work if you're a homeschool student or a student enrolled in that school, but you can't just work on a Tuesday because you're homeschooled, because your homeschool schedule is different. Yeah, there's parental forms, there's school forms, there's, you have to be done at 8 o'clock. If you do a little Google on crumble cookies, they've gotten in trouble with multiple states and the Department of Labor, and it takes forever for the Department of Labor to investigate you federally under any administration because they continue to hire underage workers and operating like commercial mixers and commercial cutters and things, which you can't do till you're 18.
Those are huge. They're like this big.
Uh-huh.
I used to work in a
That's
bakery.
wild.
And I remember there was an interview, and I don't think it's online anymore. I think their PR person told them to take it off, but the owner's father said, well, not all kids are cut out for college, so some of them should start working sooner, was his excuse for why they hired minors. I was like, oh,
No.
hire a PR person, for goodness sake.
Yeah. And I will say, so my oldest worked at Ziggy's, and it was the pandemic. He was already doing online school. It was really good for him. I know the pandemic wasn't kind to a lot of students that age, but it worked really well for him. It wasn't that hard of an obstacle to get the paperwork signed. And it was really, he made it harder than anybody else did because he was just like, didn't get it done.
Yeah.
So it's not like an insurmountable hurdle. So if you are going to hire people under the age of 18, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you are dealing with young people, and that's going to be probably your biggest headache, was my takeaway from that. Yeah.
I think that's right.
Okay. So on that note, let's talk about that, because one of the things.
Stephanie has a question.
Oh yeah, Stephanie, do you have the weird mic? You have to wait for the weird mic. Okay, jump in, buddy.
So I've actually heard from the business owner perspective of they want to hire younger people, kids. They want to hire so that they can have that opportunity to learn some life skills and work skills and all that kind of stuff. But because of those time restraints and those limitations, and because of minimum wage requirements and all of that they've deterred, and they will only hire people over 18 because they need that dependability, that stability. So is there any advice or anything to offer business owners who want to give that opportunity to younger people?
I mean, hire in the summer because they can work 40 hours a week in the summer unless they're 15, it's less. You can pay 15-year-olds less than minimum wage, only 75% of minimum wage for 15-year-olds.
Whoa.
But
That's wild.
But you also have less time to work with that, the least amount of time, the least ability to do that. So hire in the summer if you're doing a weekend type business, and that's hard, right? Not every business is open on the weekends or working on the weekends. And just do your planning in advance. I
was going to jump in and just say, I think the challenge with hiring young people, in addition to hiring young people who are just learning things, I just mean they're learning things. They're
That's right.
It's their first job. They're learning job 101 stuff is what I call it. Show up on time, put your phone away, dress appropriately. But if you just make if you know you're going into it.
That's not job, that's life.
That's right.
Also job.
Also, yeah. But if you just know going into it that those are some of the hurdles, I think you can be well prepared. But that's a great question.
Yeah, definitely plan ahead. And I also think I refer to younger employees sometimes as they're new to the work and new to the world. So sometimes they don't know what they don't know.
But if your heart's in that space, do it. I would say, really, because they're just some young people. I know I was in this boat because I had a boss pull me aside and tell me some things that they need somebody to coach them through this, because they may not learn it in school, and they may not learn it from their folks, and that's not knocking on either of those. It's just, this is their opportunity, and if you're willing to create an environment that does that for them, I think what a great opportunity.
That's right.
So let's talk about that, because you've mentioned a few things about L&I, labor and industry, so let's not just acronym soup everybody. But you said, as we were emailing back and forth getting ready for this, something about an accident prevention plan, which I think plays really well into labor and industry. So let's talk about whatever that is.
Yeah, so accident prevention plan, APP, it's the #1 most cited and fined violation in the state of Washington for L&I. Because every business that has an employee, and if you are a owner of a business and you are taxed as an S Corp or you're a corporation, you're also an employee, technically.
Correct.
You have to have an accident prevention plan. And it has to be formal and written.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So when running my business full time, I've since taken a real job, as I like to say.
A real job?
Yeah, even though I had a real job. I had a wonderful enrolled agent, which is similar to a CPA, just nationally licensed? Yeah.
Yeah.
So she would say that all the time. Okay, we're gonna do this thing, and you need to have this thing, and it needs to be written and whatever. And because it was just me on payroll and my wife, my cheat code, and I'm not saying this is okay, but my cheat code was to start the Word document, put the title in it, save it in a folder, and then just go, I'll fix this when I need to, because I'm
right
the only
as they're coming to the door.
And, yeah, but at least it's there, it's been documented, and it's got a history, but I'll fill in the information when I need to. So I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but it at least kept me going, and I at least created the document. That's how I handle that.
So it's going to vary by your industry, what needs to be in there. Some industries, obviously construction and kind of some of the more dangerous trades, have some real specific requirements, but otherwise it's industry specific. So we have one for SIMBA, and I kind of laughed when I was creating it. I'm like, what do I say? Like, please lift with your knees when we're tabling, or don't cut your hands on the handouts, right? No paper cuts. Here's where the first aid kit is.
Yeah.
So it's industry specific. There are forms on L&I. We are doing a workshop in the fall with the director of the accident prevention program, where we'll walk you through everything you need for that. We just don't have a date yet.
It's early September.
Early September. So as soon as we get that date, we'll get up there. But if there's any kind of L&I claim, an injury, a wage claim, a lack of an appropriate license, they're going to ask for your accident prevention plan every time. And if you don't have one, it's kind of an automatic fine. It's a small fine to start. It's like $50, but it can be $25,000 or the loss of your ability to do business in the state of Washington if it's egregious, right?
Yeah.
You've been in trouble multiple times if we get there. But you need to have in there how you orient your staff to safety. So that is, here's where the first aid kit is in our office. Everyone knows where it is.
Which is more important than you think.
Right? And that it's checked, right? I checked it the other day. I'm like, oh, these Tylenol are very expired. Yeah. A description of your health and safety program, whatever that looks like, and it's going to vary. If there's PPE required for your business, you have to talk about that.
Again, personal protection equipment.
Yes, sorry. So many acronyms constantly.
A million. Yeah.
How you report on-the-job accidents or safety concerns. And there has to be clear this is the person you talk to and how you contact them. If there's hazardous materials at your work, right? If we've got chemicals, if we've got an eye wash station, whatever that looks like. And if you have a safety or health committee, and it can be a committee of one, because with your accident prevention plan, the other thing Ellen and I always ask about is your safety committee or meetings. So if you have at least one employee, and this is wild, you have to have safety meetings, possibly with yourself, which is weird.
Just do it with your annual meeting when you report to the Secretary of
Except
State.
you have to do it once a month.
Oh, no.
So, and it has to be documented.
Oh,
and
goodness.
sometimes we don't always do them. And again, there's no L&I police, but if there's a problem, they're going to ask, especially if there's an injury.
Yep. Or a disgruntled employee. I would say
100%.
a lot of the businesses that I have heard about struggles with L&I is an employee leaves and decides they're going to report you for something that maybe didn't even happen, but they know you're probably not, crossing all your T's and dotting all your
Or
I's.
a disgruntled competitor. That happens a little more in the nonprofit space. Sometimes
Weird.
That's
so mean. Like, you're all in this.
Yes. How nonprofits often lose
I
their
thought they were all the nicest people.
C3 status is not because they're not doing things right and they're not filing their 990s, which is the nonprofit tax form. It's because somebody competed for a grant and somebody else got it and somebody's mad, so they report them and say they're not following the rules.
The cutthroat world of nonprofits.
It's wild space. So sometimes I will have meetings and I'll be like, today I checked this first aid kit, which can count as a meeting.
Okay.
And I write it down in a log. And so you have to have them at least once a month, and they have to be documented. If you have a supervisor, there has to be at least one supervisor available. So if the supervisor's having the meeting, great.
Can I jump? So
Yeah.
my oldest is providing me with like a wealth of stories I didn't even realize we were going to get to tell today. So I've mentioned he worked at Ziggy's. He has a condition called vasovagal syncope, which means when he sees his own blood, he immediately passes out, like immediately, and looks like he's having a seizure. So while at Ziggy's, he cut his finger, and he not bad, and he didn't realize that he had this condition, but he knew he doesn't do well when he sees his own blood. So he goes, doesn't know where the safety kit is, and this is not me tattling on Ziggy's, but he didn't remember where it was, the emergency kit. So he goes to one of the cashiers and he's trying to explain to this other young person that he's not gonna, and he passes out, falls backwards into shelves, splits his head open. I get a phone call from him on the way to the ER, and he's just loopy. He cannot remember what's going on. his mom and I are not together. So he's trying to ask me what home he's at. And I'm like, what home you're at? You're at work right now, bud. And he's like, no, where am I at right now? I was like, you're at work, bud. And so anyway, the bottom line was for Ziggy's, they had no problem supporting this accident injury. They handled it very, very well. He's been hurt on the job at other places in other states who are so reluctant to call it a workplace injury because they don't actually understand how L&I works. It's an insurance that you pay into. And while I don't know how it goes on the business side, but businesses are there's a lot of them that are very reluctant to have an L&I claim, and they shouldn't be, because I think it puts you in more trouble than it doesn't. So I'm only telling that story to just one, if you have vasovagal syncope, tell your employers. He still doesn't and still has this problem. But the other thing is if you're an employer and somebody gets hurt at work, please, please, please don't be afraid of it becoming an L&I issue, because it's set up to help the employee and you. That would be my takeaway from that. You could jump in if you have something else to add to that.
So I think why there's sometimes a reluctance to report is because if there's a job accident, your premium might go up for the next year.
Yes.
Right? And that premium, your workers' compensation premium, goes to all of your employees. So if we're talking about a 1% increase, but you have 25 employees, that's big payroll number.
Yeah.
Right? But the flip side is if you don't report it and your child went to the hospital on their own.
Yeah.
And they always ask on those forms
They
if there's
absolutely
an accident.
do ask at the ER, where did this happen? Yep.
And they're going to find out, and that is worse.
Yeah.
Because that's not it's going to be an increase to your premium, but it's also going to be a big fine, potentially.
Yeah. And not only did Ziggy's know that this was, when he finally went to the L&I part of OT, occupational therapy, they're like, oh, Ziggy's. They knew the information, they memorize it, because it's a place where there's going to be injuries, right? Okay.
And for workers' comp.
Yeah.
Oh, Amanda.
Yeah, jump in.
Oh, it's okay. I was just waiting for you guys to be done.
We might not ever have been done, so please jump in.
Well, but you are on a roll, and this is a related question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, audience here is businesses, and I think by virtue of being here, there's a self-selection of people who want to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Can you tell some stories of businesses that maybe were not following the rules intentionally and it's dangerous for employees? Sure. Because what I fear is the flip side is employees will often not report things because they're worried about their job status getting revoked. Yeah. And how you guys have helped businesses navigate that, so it's not as much of an issue.
Yeah, gratefully.
Sort of the head in the sand mindset, I'm just going to pretend that.
Gratefully, we work with a lot of people at SIMBA who are I just want to know the answer in advance, so I'm not telling them this, but you can subscribe to the L&I newsletter, and you get reports of people doing things, usually in the construction industry, getting massive fines for not tying people off on a roof, for example. And repeated violations. And I just saw a fine of $1.5 million because somebody died.
Yeah.
And L&I always has, the worst thing, we always say OSHA laws, L&I rules are written in blood. It's literally because somebody died or got injured. Yeah. And good thing your son wasn't there because they can't see blood. But it's something that, there's that extreme end of it, this isn't going to work. The real problem is we get people talking to us, especially wage issues, right? People not getting paid correctly, people not getting paid overtime correctly, and they're afraid to report it because they're going to get fired. And legally, they can't get fired because it's retaliation.
But it happens.
But they're going to get fired, and the employer maybe has Sally was late 5 times, and that's why she got fired, kind of thing. So sometimes I encourage people, find a new job first and then report it if you can. But the worst case is somebody dies on the job, which nobody wants to experience. You lose your business. If you are a serial violator, and this is usually big industries, right? Sometimes people go to jail for this, depending on how severe the penalties are. So very far end, no one in this room would do that. And I will say workers' compensation for the kind of work most of the people in this room are doing is a pretty small number. It's a pretty low percentage. It's usually office-based work. I don't know what our rate is. It's under 3%. It's tiny. The highest rate is actually not even construction. It's janitorial, because there's so many slip and falls that occur in janitorial work.
Tracks.
So that's the highest rate. Restaurant industry is kind of in the middle, right? It's pretty dangerous. The highest is underwater welding for obvious reasons. right? That doesn't happen here. I don't believe there's any underwater welding occurring in any of our local lakes
Actually,
or rivers.
I know people who do that. They install the boat lifts that go in the water and then lift your boat out of the water. So there's a little bit in our area.
Okay.
Wild though.
Going to be
Wild.
your highest rate.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it can be incredibly low for office type jobs.
And Amanda, I would say, because I've just been dealing with businesses for a long time, the cost of putting your head in the sand is always going to outweigh whatever headache you have on the upfront. And if a business is struggling with the value proposition, as Nathan said, the value of doing this sort of administrative behind the scenes stuff, go watch Angie's interview from last month on the invisible work that it takes to run a business. And I would encourage anybody that you deal with to do that, because there is reward at the end of the rainbow when you do the invisible work, but you have to remind yourself that it's there. And having employees is a tricky animal. The other thing I would say, which doesn't really answer your question, but if you want to hire employees and this feels super overwhelming to you, what I did when I had employees is I just went through a staffing agency. You're gonna pay a premium. So if you're paying $18 an hour, you might pay the staffing agency $23 an hour, but all of that headache that we're talking about, you don't manage. They manage it for you. And if the employee is a home run, which I experienced, once you satisfy the contract with the staffing agency, which is like 500 hours, then you can hire them directly. And that was such a good thing for me, because I had to let somebody go, but then I didn't have to worry about the back end of the, what happens when they want to claim unemployment. I didn't have to handle any of that. The staffing agency manages that and mitigates that, and that's the premium I was happy to pay. So that's my solution to that. Yeah, we've got another question.
Yeah.
Just airmail the mic. Oh wait, I already made it way back to Nathan. I was kidding. Yeah.
I would say Associated Industries is also a really good resource.
Yes.
When I had my laundromat, I needed them desperately when I had an L&I claim, because I needed to make sure I was doing it correctly.
Yeah.
And they have attorneys that you can ask all sorts of questions. But my question is, and we briefed, I know your attitude with AI, but so there's just so many resources available. And for a new business owner that's trying to save money and want to do it DIY, you can get all of the information, but it's painstaking to go to all of the workshops and all of, and you can go with SBDC and SIMBA and all of and New Venture Lab and get all your information.
Yeah.
But I can see AI going, I'm just going to sit down and ask AI what I need. Give me a checklist of all the things I need. So how can you make sure then that you're getting the accurate information?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And could SIMBA just create some prompts for us?
Ooh, what a great value add.
I know, I apologize. I came in hot about AI for a second right when we got here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just attacked Kelly. And it was not personal. So the problem with AI, and when I was just reviewing things I want to talk about today, is it doesn't always link the most reliable source. Right? And so I tell people thinking about, especially if you're using a chat bot, if it's Reddit, it's not the right information. And I know everyone in this room knows that, but Alexis and I can probably share some questions we've received in the past from people who have definitely like, well, I saw this thing. I'm like, where'd you see it? And then they show me and it's like Reddit. I'm like, okay. Or a TikTok from like just a content creator, not even, because I think Ellen is on TikTok now. So
I will say there is some really great content on TikTok around workplace injuries if you're interested.
But also, knowing that the source is reliable, clicking on the link and not just going to the summary and actually reading the information, because it does often bring up like Department of Revenue where a lot of your questions are, but it gives you a summary. It's not always accurate. So just go and double check, right? Because it'll say like, can you hire unpaid interns in the state of Washington?
This is on your list. And,
and it says yes. And that's not untrue. However, there's a lot of that goes into it. So if you're a for-profit business hiring an unpaid intern, the intern has to be getting some kind of school credit, right? And for that, you usually have to be signed up with the school as the employer to make sure the credit is happening. And the work they are doing has to be purely educational for the student.
It can't
not
be like busy.
To benefit your business. So you can't hire someone to work at your marketing firm. I just told a group this and someone just was having a meltdown in the back.
We could spend the rest of this talking
Who's
about
like
this.
making
it makes
content.
Me so mad.
You can't do things that you could be billing for if you're not paying them.
Yeah.
You can pay them minimum wage and then bill them out at hundreds of dollars an hour, speaking of the legal industry, for interns. But it's not, you cannot otherwise. So the answer is yes, but.
Yeah.
So clicking the links, one thing that we are working on, finally, we have another team member who's not here. Washington State has a small business guide. It's a PDF, it's 115 pages long. And it is
out of here.
dense.
Ugh.
And up until like 3 or 4 years ago, it didn't even have live links in it.
I mean,
So it'd
back
have,
to
like-
Amanda saying, like, not a very business-friendly state. Like, oh.
Yes, it would have a URL that was long.
Yeah, so
like
you have to type it
this
out.
in and go here. And so we're working on
That
a small
tracks.
business guide that's like 10 pages long of like the things you absolutely need to know. And then if you need more help, here's where to go with links.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have that out in the next month or so. But also, right, how do you get that? I think finding a trusted advisor for us, a lot of that is outreach, knowing who to talk to. But if you're a business owner, you don't know. And so I don't have a good answer with AI other than we need more media literacy. People need to go back to English classes, right? We need to allow people to understand those things.
Yeah.
But I don't know socially how we combat that.
Yeah.
And also, it is a tool, and knowing that it's a tool and not a content creator, and that it's not the answer, it's a set of resources.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is the magic question Stephanie can answer,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Anna, about how
We'll have to get you the mic
how we
and-
battle AI to use it correctly, right?
Yeah.
And use it in a way that matters.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Anna Martin. I would like to say several things about that question in terms of AI. Not all AI is created equal.
Correct.
The paid version and the free version will give you drastically different results. You have to tell the prompt, use reliable sources.
Correct.
Like verified reliable sources. And sometimes you even have to say, don't use Wikipedia, right? I agree wholeheartedly that you have to go in and click the sources and do the things. Perplexity, I use Perplexity a lot. And I have a paid version for free for a year through PayPal, some kind of
nice.
PFM. I'm not sure how that happened.
Yeah.
But I think Perplexity is a research tool, and it's engineered to produce quote unquote reliable results. But in my field, you cannot search for grants on Perplexity because they will give you grants that are like 2 years old that are not active anymore. So in that case, you hire a grant writer. Ding, ding, ding. But I just use AI with caution. It's a tool. It's not morally neutral. It's, what else? Also keep in mind the ethics of it. Thank you.
Okay, so can we just, I want to double back to something really quick. So, yeah, one of the most egregious things that I have seen, and you barely touched on this, so I really want to come back to this, makes me so hot because it happens all the time, is this intern thing.
Yes.
Literally, businesses cannot have volunteers. This was something
Yes,
that you
that's
put
a
in your
different
thing.
thing. Yes.
They cannot have volunteers. It is the definition of a business versus a nonprofit. And I see it happen all the time where businesses think that they can just have unpaid volunteers because they're in college. That is not the same thing as your unpaid intern getting college credit. And so one, if you have young people who are entering the workforce or entering the college people, your own humans that you created, please, please, please advocate on their behalf because they will, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, walk into this. And I've seen it happen a bunch. Two, if you hear of businesses doing it, please, please, please find a safe, polite way to either tell them no or tell somebody else no, because it just drives me nuts, especially businesses, and you see it in the design space, the creative space, the marketing space. If you're using it to get a competitive advantage, you're an a-hole. And that's probably the first time I've said a-hole in a business brew, but like you are. So I'm sorry, that made me really hot, and I want you to jump in and talk. Yes, because this was one of your talking points.
Yes.
And I was really glad you brought this up.
Oh my gosh, I send so many DMs when people post, because I see it especially in the summer. We're looking for a summer volunteer for our retail store.
For our retail. Okay, I'm
And you're
gonna
just
really
gonna
try
stock
to be.
shelves and talk to customers. And I was like, oh,
That sounds like a job.
that sounds like a job. And so in Washington, nonprofits, educational institutions who are genuinely nonprofits, and government entities, which are some educational institutions in like the city of Spokane, can have volunteers. That is it. You cannot have a volunteer if you're a for-profit business, even if you're not making money. I told someone the other day, you can be a for-profit not making money. You can be a nonprofit making money.
And a place where I see, I'm so sorry, but
No,
a place where I
please.
see this get really muddied for businesses is when they have like an event or some kind of a thing where they recruit volunteers because their event maybe is supporting a nonprofit. So the business who wants to support a nonprofit is recruiting volunteers. That is not volunteering for the nonprofit.
That's right.
Right? So, okay, I'm so sorry.
In that situation
Yeah.
specifically, the nonprofit has to be recruiting and tracking those volunteers. So if you're like,
Right.
you're like, you don't have to do a background check, depending on what kind of nonprofit it is,
Okay,
right?
okay.
If it's kid related,
Yeah. Oh my
that
gosh.
kind of thing.
We're going to...
Obviously, but I send a lot of messages like, hey, here's the information about how you can't have a volunteer and how it's a giant violation. Because let's say you do have a volunteer. And I mentioned there's no L&I police, but there kind of is. Because the other side of L&I are mandatory reporters.
Yeah.
So one of the things people get in trouble with a lot, construction, especially small construction, you have to have your business license or your construction license on like all of your advertising.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's a potential fine or at least a conversation, right? It's not always a fine. Usually it's first a conversation. And if those people see it, they have to report you. So if you are posting on social media where people at L&I also go on social media and the side that's a reporting side sees that you have a volunteer, you're going to get a call. They're going to ask about your accident prevention plan. They're going to want to see all the required paperwork for this employee, and you're going to get in trouble. And if you improperly use someone as a volunteer or as a contractor versus an employee, and I have a really good
Well, that's another one that gets
story
me hot. Oh my gosh.
about that. But you pay them double their wages that you should have paid them, plus interest from when the first day you should have
So
paid them.
you're saying if you had a volunteer, if you did this no-no
Yep.
thing that we've been talking about,
Yep.
and you get caught,
Yep.
you have to pay them double. That's outstanding.
Double the wages, plus interest, plus a fine, plus all the like payroll taxes and all these other things.
Wow.
Not worth it, especially
No.
when I start talking about, Alexis is right, we really talk about like, here's what it actually costs to hire someone. And it's not just that amount. And depending on your industry, it could be 10 to 15% more without additional benefits like insurance and 401k, which we have. So that obviously adds a cost. But you're going to look at that number. So if it's minimum wage, 17 something an hour, I should know that off the top of my head. Plus that, maybe it's $20 an hour effectively to have that person there. But would you rather pay $20 an hour now or 40 plus? Yeah, please. Please.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yes.
yep, we got it. And Angie, kick me, remind me to come back to you.
Yes.
Just because we have so many entrepreneurs that go through the program and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I want an intern. And so the question of paying or non-paying always comes up. So the question is, if they want this college student to get them coffee, then they should be a paid intern.
That's right.
But if they're going to get coffee, then as it free with not being paid, then it needs to be educational, like research where the beans
Right, you're
come
learning,
from and
right, like
how to make the
job
coffee.
shadowing.
Yes.
Right? And maybe not all of your duties have to be 100% educational, right? There's not a good number. I do have over on the table.
But
like,
that is a kind of a
there's a gray area, but if you're doing, really what the test is if you're doing anything where you're literally making money for your business through that person.
Okay.
Right? Whether you're directly billing their work to a client or they're part of a project that is going to be the end product for them, instead of just learning about the project, watching the project, maybe giving input into staff meeting, that's learning.
Yeah. It's not free labor.
It's not free
really
labor.
not. Yeah.
And so the contractor thing, there's someone in town, and we love this person, but they often hire people under the table when there's staffing issues. For like a big event or a big weekend, it's a retail space. And they're like, oh, well, it's my friend employee. And you're both a bad friend and bad employer.
Yes.
If it's a friend employee.
Yeah.
Because what if something happens? Or what if that person, like you said, disgruntled employee, what if that person's not your friend anymore?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I worked this many hours at this store and
It's
I
all
got
fun and games till someone gets
paid
hurt or fired.
$50 for the day or whatever because I thought it was fine, but really, or an accident happens.
Yeah. Contract labor is one that gets me hot too, because it happened to me. I got a sales job, 100% commission. So the person I was working for thought that made me a contractor, but then required I was at the office certain hours, which is immediately a no-no of a contractor. And I was young and I needed the job. It was the recession and I was in marketing, which is like two things that didn't mix very well. And I still deal with that trauma in a lot of ways. But so I was just like willing, I was just like eager. And this is why I'm like, support and advocate for your young people in your lives. Yeah. But their CPA, thank God, their CPA knew what was going on and gave them a tongue lashing. And then I went and I started getting paid. It wasn't much longer that I was let go, probably for that exact reason. But like contract employees, volunteers, interns, like just ask the right questions, engage SIMBA, like make sure you're doing your due diligence. There's room and opportunity for these things. You just got to make sure you're doing it right.
That's right.
Yeah.
The contractor test is really one of control. So if you're setting their schedule versus saying like, you can say I need a contractor 4 days a week. And they pick their 4 days. That's not setting their schedule. But if you need to be here at 8 and your lunch is at noon and you're back at 12:30, that's a problem.
Right. You can set a deadline too. Like I need it by this time is not the same thing as controlling their time.
The real thing that I think people miss when there's an investigation about contractor versus employee, they ask if that person is sending you invoices. So you're not just tracking their hours and giving them the check. The contractor needs to send you an invoice. Have a contract if you could. That also helps. And they need to have their own business, their own business license. They need to be managing their own B&O and sales tax if sales tax applies to their industry. They need to be regularly engaged in that business. You cannot, well, for right now, you can still keep them from competing with another competitor business if you pay them south of $300,000, north of $300,000.
That's wild.
And that rule is going away. In 2027, you cannot do non-competes for contractors in Washington anymore.
Okay.
That just passed, so it'll start January 1.
Yeah, you can't monopolize their time just to be able to have them as a
because they're not your
contractor.
employee.
Okay, we have one more question. Thank you, Stephanie. You're the best. What I
I'm only saying this to help you.
I know, I appreciate you. I was more internally going, there's not enough time. Okay.
Okay, this is still on the contractor topic.
Please.
So I'm starting my own business, but I currently am a contractor for a nonprofit. I've created a ton of content for webinars that have had like hundreds of people on them. And now that I'm going to be starting my own business and starting a podcast and doing all these things, can you talk to me about intellectual property?
Oh boy.
Ooh, I mean, vaguely.
Is it mine?
So I can talk to you about it, but you talk to a lawyer. But what I will say is your contract probably says something about who owns the content in it. And it's probably a work for hire. And it's often assumed a work for hire. So if you're creating content for someone else, they generally own it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my contract says nothing about intellectual property.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
And hopefully they don't watch this.
So, yeah, that's a
will
real,
not.
there's all kinds of nuances around that. I'm happy to refer you to an IP attorney who could talk to you. Do you still have an IP clinic?
They still have the attorney, yes.
The IP clinic specifically?
I don't, yes, I believe so.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I know someone I can send you to.
Yeah.
Because it's going to really depend on also potentially how they've discussed it with you during the course of the work, what platforms it's on. If it's their platform, you can't just take it from their platform, right?
Yeah.
You can't just download their client list and their data.
Yeah.
Also, if you use AI as part of your creative process, there is still open debate and gray area as to if the AI owns
Right.
part of the IP as well.
So, okay, so we do
Yeah.
have to wind down. I want to be
Please.
mindful of time, but a couple things that just
Yes.
came to my mind. One,
Volunteers.
no, SIMBA, no, I know, contractors. SIMBA does have some resources. You said there is some mentoring that's available.
Yeah.
There's some free, some paid, depending
so
on it.
for things like this that we've talked about today, it's almost all L&I topics. We have an incredible L&I contract. The beauty of our L&I contract too is that all the people on our team, some of them are here, some of them are not here, who do the L&I work are trained by L&I literally monthly on this. We have the most current information, we have the most current data. So all of the L&I related accident prevention plans, anything wage and hour law related, contractor licensing, if you're doing like construction work or specialty licensing, food truck licensing, we get asked about that a lot.
Yeah.
All the things L&I regulates, those are free consultations.
Yeah.
You can meet with us as much as you want. There's a point where our professional insurance says we'll send you to a lawyer or a CPA. Also, the Small Business Office is an incredible resource. We can share that with you. Again, they will answer your questions. They do not report you.
Yeah.
And I think my other pro tip about volunteers too is don't post on social media you're trying to hire a volunteer, even if you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Unless you're a nonprofit, an educational institution, or a government entity.
Yeah. So some other resources that I wanted to chime in with
Yes.
on that are not maybe specific to volunteers,
Yeah.
but SCORE does offer free business mentoring. That is a small business administration funded for now entity. SBDC, Small Business Development Center, also small business administration funded agency, does free business mentoring. I would be remiss if I did not mention Business Brew's really good friend Mark Pond as a business reference librarian for the Spokane Library. Great set of resources and a great website through startupspokane.com with a ton of really good resources there. So there is places to go if you need support for this. There are people you can ask, and a lot of people who really want to support, because we do recognize the hurdles in this state to sometimes operating a small business. And my last thing is, if you're hot about something like I am and you want to see something change, I really encourage you to engage with your local politicians. It's the only way that you can get heard. So reach out to your local senator, your state congressperson, try to get them engaged. If you live in the city, go to council meetings, try to engage there. If you are in the county, try to engage with the commissioners. Just advocate for small businesses, because regardless of how the government or federal government feels about them, you're the backbone of the economy and of employment in this country. And so we need you to thrive. And that's my soapbox moment, and I'll get off. Beyond that, just a round of applause for Robin for being so amazing. So if you want more stories, if you want to keep talking with her, if you want to engage, one fellow politely asks that we either step into one of the booths or grab coffee downstairs from Anvil. I believe they're open. And really, it's just, this is a working environment. So let's kindly grab a space. They are more than willing to let you stick around and have those conversations. Number two on that, round of applause for Fellow and Sophia for hosting us. So amazing. And if you want more stories about vasovagal syncope and my oldest, I would also be happy to tell you those. So last guest comes June 5th. Corey Staley will be here. It's not something that we got to talk about, but we will be talking about workplace violence, prevention and intervention, threat management, and travel risk, or one or all of the above. So that will be our last formal interview session of Business Brew. And then July 10th, we will do an informal happy hour in the afternoon at a local brewery, all that to be determined other than July 10th. So if you need to get on the list, connect with me, give me your card. Otherwise, just round of applause for Slab, for Robin, and for Fellow for putting this together. And with that, we're done.